What's up, everybody? Hi, welcome to Carpo's Garage. This is where my old grow room used to be, and I just spent most of the day remodeling this area and cleaning it out. And got everything back in place. I got my stereo and my speakers and my view. I'll show you what I'm looking at here. Just a nice little view of the pond with all the kids' toys and junk in front of it. This gives me a little space to just kind of kick back and do my own thing, even though the other office over there. So anyway, I was out here and I was listening to, while I was cleaning up, I had my iPod on. Actually, it's a Zune, believe it or not. I still have a Zune, Microsoft. Got it when they first came out. I wanted one, and it still works. It still works well. So anyway, I got this this Zune that's loaded up with shit from like '06 or something. So it's like 10 years old. And some slightly more modern, but most of it's at least 5 years old, so it's stuff I was listening to back then. Anyway, long story short, a majority of what's on that thing, it seems like, is Manly P. Hall. And another thing that comes on often is this, it's a series, it's actually an audiobook, and it's called, oh god, it's just going to totally evade me now. True something, yeah. Damn it, I don't remember. Anyway, this point, it doesn't matter. It's basically about how human nature and how fear instills a false sense of understanding within us. Rather, how when we're scared, our brains don't think clearly. And that's always been a major area of study of mine because of the fact that fear is such a rampant thing within our society. It seems so prevalent. So many people are scared of so many things. And it really tied into that Manly Hall, I can't remember which lecture I was listening to, but he was talking about how much more of a burden it is to live in today's world than it was yesterday's. And, you know, a lot of folks may think that it's easier today, but of course we've only lived in today, unless you're, 80, 90, and you've lived through, this amazing, from electricity to computers, basically. But with our modern society, it brings us many more burdens than we once had. In the old days, if the crop didn't come in, then it didn't come in. You could stress all you want about it, but it is what it was, And if people were more likely to be content with their lot in life because there wasn't a whole lot to look at. Now, in today's world, everything's shown us what we could have, the things that we could be, the money we could have, the resources that we could plunder. And on top of that, on top of those stresses of trying to keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak, on top of that we also have bills. Everybody you might have to worry about 10, 15, 20 different bills, credit card bills, electricity bills, and you're worrying about many different things. Whether the power's going to get shut off because of this one, or whether somebody's going to take you to court, or whether or not you're going to be put into collections and have to collect a bunch. It's all of these stupid little things really are just laughable to us. But just a minute, I'll be right out. See, I get in the time when I can. I have two wild, crazy kids, and then an older, wild, crazy kid. So the younger and the older. In the old days, that stuff used to just totally drive. It would bug me, if I got interrupted, because I would lose my train of thought. And one day I sat down and I'm like, who cares, dude? You're just making videos. It's not like you're trying to be professional. Shit, your background's usually full of crap, So anyway, over the time I've kind of had a different perspective of that. So back to fear, and back to Manly Hall talking about our lot in life and how a lot of people were just content with what they had, and of course people always wanted more. That's a given. If they didn't, we never would have ended up where we were today. Human nature is inquisitive, curious. We want to discover things and create things because we are creators. It doesn't matter what religious persuasion or otherwise you are, we are creators. We invent things. We create things, not just with our physical hands, but with our minds. If we have an idea, we can picture something in our heads that we want to see created, and then that comes to life through our actions. That is creation through intention. whether you're hands-on or not. And that to me is just amazing. So these little amazing things about just existing to me are the things that keep me happy, contented, alive, you know, being a human. And why I'm so distraught, not distraught, I guess, why it bothers me that there's so much fear in the world is because I see that future generations, you see, I could sit here and say, other people can fear all they want, I'm going to live my life and be content, screw the rest of the world. And I could easily just slink back into my cave with my family and my friends and just say screw everybody. And a lot of people do seem to take this attitude, but for me, I know my children have to grow up in this world, and my children, damn it, they're going to want to have children, and their children don't want to have children. And it doesn't matter how defeatist we are about the world, we still have to realize that that's just the way it is, the future. The kids are going to have kids. So the least we can do is lessen the burden on them and the anxiety of being human, and realize and teach them the potential that they really have. So, trying not to get off track here, but it all ties together in my mind anyway. We're living in a much more complicated world, but we're making it complex by choice. That's my point. All of these things that we're trying to be and do and see. You know, for example, when I hear a person tell me that they're totally stressed out and they don't know what they're going to do and how they're going to make their payments, and then I find out that they bought a $50,000 car and they make $40,000 a year, I just don't feel any sorrow for them at all. I say to myself, you're just an idiot. You made that decision. You made the decision to buy something worth a year of your work when you could have easily bought something for a couple grand. Now, there's nothing wrong with having nice stuff, but I don't feel sorry for the guy who buys a mansion and gets foreclosed on. I just don't care. I do care about the average person who's just trying to put food on the table, who's just trying to live a normal life. And I don't care if we can't keep up with the Joneses or what kind of shit we can't have, because that's what brings us this fear. The fear of not being adequate. Inadequacy, fuck that. You know, seriously, if you think you're inadequate, you need to realize that you are fully adequate. And if you feel like there's something, and I'm talking about being a human, like you're fully capable and adequate, and you have the same rights, and you should, as everyone else. It doesn't mean that you're not making mistakes. Now, if you see negativity in yourself, a lot of people often say, hey, you have to love yourself. Well, if you're an asshole, loving yourself won't do any good. You know, if you're a total douchebag and you go around causing trouble and getting in fights and everything, and then you wonder why you're so depressed, well, you're kind of stupid for not realizing that. It's pretty obvious. And that's just in my eyes. But I realize other people don't know that when you do things, bad things, that you are ultimately the one who pays the price for them. So it kind of goes along the lines of when people tell me, hey man, you're lucky. You're so lucky. You've got a good family and a good life. And I say, you know, I used to say, yeah, I am lucky. And now I say, bullshit. I work for it. I sacrifice. I sacrifice some of the things that I would like to do or say in order so other people can feel more comfortable around me. Or, you know, set aside my pleasures so my children can have pleasures. Those kinds of things. It's just what we do, you know, but it's not luck. Although luck of the draw does play a huge part in who we are. So, back to fear. And the reason why I'm mentioning all this stuff about me is because I want people to realize that I know that it's easy for me to sit here and say, don't be scared, or don't be fear, love yourself, all these things. I also realize that you have a different life than I do, and so does everyone else. That's back to the old word sonder, or rather a new word. That realization that everyone has a life as complex and enriched as your own, and that people aren't just players in your fucking game in your life, and a lot of people seem to go along that way. I know people, you know, in my personal life who think that it's all about them. Kind of people who will just ask you, you know, tell you a million things about them, and the minute you tell them about your life, they're like, oh, I gotta go, you know, that kind of stuff. And I've learned to just keep it to myself. And that's okay, you know. I try. And it's difficult in conversations sometimes, but to keep your mouth shut about something when you hear it and it's wrong and you're like... But anyway, the idea of fear as being a motivator in our lives is very real, very true. But the one thing I have to point out, and this is, you know, fear is handled by the amygdala, okay? The amygdala, when you're acting on fear, you know that knot you get in your stomach. Well, your body, basically your immune system, your body shuts down, your stomach ceases to digest, so the rest of your body can go into action. You start producing norepinephrine. Your body produces adrenaline. You get that heart race when something startles you or scares you. The fight or flight syndrome is very real, and it's something that we've inherited through genetics, through history. Without it, we would have all just perished. So this teaches us to get up and run. One of the scariest things about that is that we're hitting the fight or flight syndrome when people lose their job, or when a person is going in for a job interview and they're wondering if they'll get it. We're getting it when we go to the store and have to talk to someone we don't really want to talk to. We have fight or flight just about all the time. This becomes just a normal state of fear. And then we define it under the label of anxiety. What is anxiety? It's a constant state of fear. Well, when you're in fear, not only does your body produce cortisol, which will put on weight, but it'll also release a lot more sugar into the bloodstream, so your body can utilize that for and this is why fear will drain you physically and mentally, because your body's working overtime to defend itself. Eventually, you would think that that fight or flight response would diminish, right? That if a person's always constantly scared, that it would just subside and go away. But it doesn't. It's strong. It remains strong into our old years. So it's something we really have to deal with, and it's something that's very real. I see so many people who are scared of the world, and what happens is this cycle starts, the perpetual cycle. Your mind, if you start to believe that things are scary, you actually wire your brain to believe this. It becomes a permanent feature, and it's very difficult for people to break away from. I mean, you can see this in people who have been in very traumatic situations or where they were beaten a lot. It doesn't matter if a decade goes by, the person will still flinch if you raise your hand. Learned responses to our environment. These are things that happen all the time, and we don't even realize when we're doing it. I mean, it's really an amazing thing to me. Because the more I learn about myself and my body, the more I can take care of it. But the more I learn about my mind, the more I can take care of my body. Because mental and physical are ultimately tied together. Actually, somebody sent me an email today saying that the physical, that it was they did something with a friend that proved to them that the mind over body is a real experience. And they seemed like they were surprised at that, and a lot of people are surprised that they find out that the mind really does have full control over the body. If you've ever been in excruciating pain, try sitting down sometime and really focus for 2 full minutes on that pain. And don't focus on the pain as saying, oh, I want to feel the pain. Tell yourself the pain's not there. Just say it's gone. People will say that if you want to create something in your life, you have to draw it out and intend it, and it will appear. And there are thousands of stories of people who have drawn pictures of things they wanted or cut out articles and look at it every day. They call it a wishing board. You may remember it from movies like The Secret or something. There was one particular story about a guy who cut out a picture of a house, and he looked at it all the time, and years later he ended up moving into that very house across the country. Who knows if it's a true story? Who cares? Doesn't matter. The point is that if you intend for something long enough, it comes true. And this isn't just some hogwash fairy tale God gives it to you thing. This means that if you're really truly focused on something for long enough, then you will achieve it through your own means and action. So nobody's giving anything to you. It's not karma or universe. It's you taking action, because you can get anything you want. And it's very difficult to take the focus to know what you want. And I think that's the hardest thing people have, is knowing what the hell they want. And I'll tell you, for me, that's exactly what it is. I don't know what the hell I want out of life. It's almost like I'm too passive and too content at this point. I met a guy when I was in my 20s, and he was 30, and he said that by the time he was 30, he wanted to be had $1 million, and then he ended up having it. And I thought, that's pretty noble. But even now that I'm 40, I still never set that goal, because I never wanted it. I didn't want the mansion, I didn't want the money, I didn't want the sports car. I just wanted to be happy. And nothing brings me more happiness than my family. And that's the scariest thing, is because some people's family are what bring them the fear. whether they're scared of their children that act out too much, or whether they are children that are scared of their parents who are violent or abusive, or whether we're just scared to go home to our spouse because they're either abusive physically or verbally. And you know, back in the day they would say, oh, you know, men who beat their wives. These days, honestly, I know so many women who beat their husbands. And I mean that metaphorically. I know almost all my friends that I've ever met, that I've ever had, have gone through some abusive relationship with a woman that made them feel like they weren't worthy. And women are really good at manipulating men. I gotta say, I'm not, you know, there's no misogyny, no sexism, none of that shit going on here, whatever you want to call it. It's completely true. Men and women are different. And we have different minds, we have different bodies, different systems, and the way we handle things is different. Men see in the deeper field of vision, whereas women are more prone to see their immediate environment. Women are better at recognizing faces than men, and this all has to do with the mother, the father. It's very simple genetics. And as much as we try to bring it together, we are very different. So instead of trying to be equal, you know, get this full equality of men and women, I think we should be more embracing the differences and making that work for everyone. And this same thing should be applied to children. And this is why school is so fucked up and why kids are scared to go to school. You know, school breeds fear because many children, school works great for them. They go, they follow the rules, they listen. And school's not a bad thing. It teaches kids to it teaches kids to follow orders and follow the system. A lot of people are very opposed to that. But the fact is, a lot of people want a system to follow. I cannot emphasize that enough. Many people in this world want a system to follow. Many people in this world are followers by nature. It has nothing to do with being trained or being programmed. Many people choose to follow. I consider myself a leader of sorts, but at the same time I'm not a very good leader when it comes to a group. I'm better at joining a group and being told what to do, and I'll work my ass off to do it. And I don't do it because I can't handle thinking for myself. I do it because other people, I've discovered, are better at organizing their thoughts and thinking wider and more ahead on things, whereas I'm a very hands-on, in-the-moment kind of guy who can jump from thing to thing. So I cherish the fact that I'm kind of a jack of all trades and I'll go from job to job to job. Some people that might drive them nuts. They say stay on one thing and finish it. But for me, what if you're in a totally different type of job and you need to jump around, you know? I guess what I'm saying is that people are different. Races should embrace the differences. Cultures should embrace their differences. Men and women should embrace their differences. And I think that we do. But so many people are so hung up on equality, they just miss the whole point. That equality does not mean that we all have the same amount of money. It doesn't mean that we all have the same color skin or the same clothes. It merely means that we're all equally happy. At least to the degree we're allowed to be happy. I guess it means that we all have the same chance to be happy. And often we set ourselves up and don't want to be happy, and we choose fear. We choose to approach life as a negative thing. And I see it so often, and it just depresses me sometimes, you know. Okay, I gotta be careful with my words. It does not depress me, actually. I don't ever get actually depressed on it. It's just, I'm trying to think of a term to describe it. It doesn't make me mad, doesn't make me anxious, doesn't make me depressed. It makes me curious. Curious about human nature, you know. I think one of the most useful things that we can do is learn how people operate, how people think. And this means taking a little bit of psychology, learning a little bit about folks, but not so much to where you're immersed. I got into psychology for a while, and then I left once I just gotten the basic outlines of the facts about, you know, how people are different, but not the actual details of difference. I believe that studying personality types will taint your view of the world. Now, people might have heard of this B, C, D, D, F, G thing. I don't know, there's like a 4-letter system for encoding personality types. And if you start seeing people like that and trying to identify them, then you might put them in a classification missing one of the attributes from another classification. Such as, if you ever read a horoscope and you find it accurate, then you might read a bunch of other ones and not find them as accurate. But you might find one piece of it, or one part of a Scorpio that resonates with you as, say, a Sagittarius, and say, well, that's because we're all a little bit of everything, and I think that that's the same. I'm using it as a metaphor. I don't care, whether you believe in astrology or not, but that we are all different in ways that benefit us, that we need to be, because that's what puts this whole fucking thing together. It's just an amazing existence. Paracelsus talked about the four states, or the four elements, and it was like that we're all just composed of these four elements, the old elements: fire, air, water, earth. And when you just drop everything to a very simplistic existence and see it for what it is, the fear will drop away, because you realize there's nothing to fear. You don't have to fear death, you don't have to fear life, you don't have to fear people. You just have to go along with it and make it work. I don't know. I guess I'm out. I'm running short on explanations, and I've got to rethink my next video because I had another thing I really wanted to talk about. But fear is a motivator. We can use it to grow, but it'll also kick our ass if we're not careful. And it will compound itself. It will create what they call a feedback loop of negativity in the mind, where that's all you see. And it's something people have to stop. So if you're a negative thinker, if you're an unhappy person, that's why I'm doing this video, just in hopes that one negative person out there decides to change their way of thinking, because you might be happier for the rest of your life if you do. There's no refunds if it doesn't work, though, so don't come to me crying about it.